weather like this. All right, we have another game going on, this time on Saturday, a big rivalry game out in the Pac-12, USC at the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. UCLA open 3.5 now, seems to be a solid 3. And it's a key game, too, because there are 3 teams in the Pac-12 South with just 2 losses. 2 of them are going to meet here. The other one is Arizona State at 5-2. If you like to look at revenge, UCLA just rolled all over this USC team last year, 35-14. But remember that Trojans had a different coaching staff than they do now. Trojans are 1-4 against the spread against UCLA. They haven't done very well in the Rose Bowl of late. But Steve Sarkisian has a very good team here, 7-3 straight up, 6-4 against the spread. The defense is giving up just 23.3 points per game. It's 37th in the nation. And the offense has so many talented weapons running and passing. They average over 35 points per game. And Cody Kessler, the junior, boy, what dynamite numbers this kid has. 29 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, 70% completion. So Sarkisian was supposed to help this offense a lot, and they have been extremely good. And when you look at the 3 losses, 2 of them were just by 3 points to Utah and 4 points to Arizona. Was that Arizona State they played, or Arizona?
Arizona State. They lost out on the Hail Mary.
Oh, on the Hail Mary, that's right. Okay, so another game that they...
It's called a prayer, John.
I know all about those, especially on Saturday afternoon.
From my Catholic school days, way back a million years ago.
So, Sean, you got a team here that, a couple of breaks, they could be sitting here at 9-1. But how do you see this USC team?
A couple of breaks, I could be in the White House, too. I mean, I don't know what that's worth. Yeah, okay, UCLA, the home team, it's -3. Probably going to stay there. No total yet. We'll see that probably tomorrow against USC. And you're right, it is a rivalry game. This is a Pac-12 South Division game. Goes at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. ABC will cover this thing. Look at some numbers here. UCLA, yeah, you're right, 8-2 straight up, but very poor against the bookie. I mean, this team in their first 8 games covered just 1. They've covered their last 2, so they're on a bit of a roll here. UCLA, not a team that wins by margins. They're 5-2 in the conference. They're a half a game behind Southern Cal, who is 6-2 in the conference. USC, big problem. I'm sorry, UCLA, big problem. No defense. You're right. Quarterback, I think his name Hundley, 17 touchdown passes, just 4 interceptions. Both of these teams run the ball for over 200 yards. Can't even talk here. Both of these teams rush the ball for over 200 yards a game. But again, that defense for UCLA gives up 28 points a game. It's tough to stay in games when you score 35 a game and give up over 28. So the winner of this game will get to go to the Pac-12 championship game, which will be played on Friday, December the 6th in Santa Clara, and lose to Oregon. Because in my opinion, Oregon will run the table and they will win this Pac-12 thing going away. And either one of these teams will be at least a touchdown underdog, in my opinion. Okay, Southern Cal. They're at 7-3 straight up. They're 6-4 against the number, which is a whole lot better. They're 3-2 straight up and against the number on the road. And you're right, they have lost the last 2 games to UCLA. I don't know about this revenge thing. I guess in college maybe it has, if they have the opportunity, they'll do it. I'm not big on it in the NBA or the NFL. But their defense only gives up 23 points a game, which is a lot better than 28. And they're getting 3 points. Here's one of these things I look at again, the average line in UCLA games. UCLA average line -10, and their average margin, however, a victory is just 7. When you add up all their wins and losses, all the margins. Southern Cal average line is also -10, but they win by 12. So the overlay would seem to be to Southern Cal. Of the better off of the 4 teams in these, when I do this thing, the better of the 4 teams on this field, in my opinion, will be the Southern Cal defense. And both teams are pretty well even on the offense. I think it's actually a fairly close game. I don't know about overtime, but the possibility is there. But I can see Southern Cal winning this game straight up by about a touchdown. So I would take the dog, and in fact, that will be my best play on the show is Southern Cal plus the 3.
All right, this UCLA team has had a good season, 8 wins and 2 losses. However, not in the Rose Bowl. Believe it or not, they're only 2-2 at home this season, and they have not been covering numbers. As Sean mentioned, 3-7 against the spread overall. Very good offensive numbers, but defense brought in a new defensive coordinator for this season, and despite some talent, they really haven't gelled. And Jeff, I've attended a couple of these rivalry games when I was living in the LA area. It's really an electric atmosphere, and I'm sure you've been to some too.
Yeah, I'm a UCLA fan. I have to admit it. I used to work in Westwood, but this is double revenge for USC. Here's a situation for the Pac-12 South. If USC beats UCLA and the Arizona State loses to either Washington State or Arizona, the Trojans win the South. If UCLA beats USC and Stanford, the Bruins win the South. So get that out of the way. But the SC defeated California 38-30. Kessler completed 31 of 42 passes for 371 yards and 4 TDs with an interception. The thing is, the Trojans had 9 penalties, which cost them 3 more touchdowns in that game. In fact, they're fourth in the country in penalties per game at 9.2. Trojans averaged 4.5 yards per carry while allowing 4.0. UCLA 4.8 yards per carry, allowing 4.1. UCLA, as Sean said, has had a shaky season. They survived some close calls early in the year, and they ran out of luck and they lost to Utah and Oregon. But the last 4 games, they seem to straighten things out a little bit. They've won 4 in a row. 3 of those were on the road. They lead the country in red zone offense at 97%. And a lot of that is due to Brett Hundley's dual ability to pass and run well. UCLA is coming off a bye week, although it lost to Utah following its first bye week of the season. This game, I can't imagine giving USC 3 points this game with the way that you mentioned the UCLA's defense and the way they haven't been covering. So even though I'm a UCLA fan, hopefully they win by 1 or 2, but I'll take UCLA plus the points.
Well, you're really trying to fit it into a slot here.
Yeah.
You know that, right? So.
I'm also going to side with the dog, and the reasons are very similar to what Sean said. I have not been impressed with UCLA defense. They had a lot of talent coming into the season, but it really hasn't gelled. And I like this USC defensive line. They've been very good. And the other factor is I'm not big on revenge, and with a rivalry game like this, I would put less emphasis on it. However, let's not forget that a year ago, UCLA, they stomped on the midfield pictures at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Yeah, the Coliseum. Yeah. They stomped all over the logos for USC, and they took selfies, and they published it out. In fact, Brent Huntley was quoted after that game as saying, hey, UCLA runs Los Angeles now, and I got to believe that's something that the juniors and seniors on this USC team are going to be talking about this week. So there's motivation on both sides, but I wonder if there'll be extra motivation after the display that UCLA did last year. So I will also side with the underdog. All right, let's get to some best bets. And Sean, are you going to stick with this rivalry game as your best bet?
Yeah, I think Southern Cal is enough the better team. Plus, we're getting a field goal here, which might even be the difference in the game. So I'm going to stay with Southern Cal. USC rested. Haven't played in 10 days. UCLA coming off a bye, so there shouldn't be any fatigue problems.
All right, let's take a look at one of the key NFC games coming up this weekend. It's an NFC West matchup, Arizona at Seattle. Seattle 6.5 at home, total of 42. Home field has meant a lot in this series, 11-5 against the spread. The home team is. Possible NFC playoff preview. Arizona Cardinals, they're on the road after a 2-game homestand with a new quarterback. These teams are going to meet twice in the next 5 weeks, and that's key as Arizona has a comfortable 3-game lead, but this could make it interesting if Seattle can get a victory here. Arizona's just doing everything right, 9-1 straight up, 8-2 against the spread. In fact, they've been undervalued for a while, 20-7 spread run. The offense, they can't run the football, 30th in rushing. They're 11th in passing. However, Harvard, they have a brand new quarterback.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's brand new. I think, what is he, 3-1 so far this year, behind center. But let me tell you one thing. The Cardinals are for real. You see this hat right here? That's a Cardinal. That's right there. They're for real. Here's my announcement. There is no big, bad Seattle Seahawk team, at least for this year. There's trouble in the big house. Pete Carroll, you know what? He's a great front runner. He's a rah-rah. He's he's pom-poms on the sideline. He's not an in-your-face type coach. And you know what? When you need to get people to produce, you got to get in their face. You got to grab that face mask. I don't think he's the right guy for that job. Couple things on this game. Arizona, they can't rush the ball. So how does that work out? That means they have to pass. But who are they passing into? A very good secondary for Seattle. Seattle, they're number 30 in passing. So what do? They rush the ball, but Arizona, they're number 3 against the run. So Wilson can't pass. Lynch, maybe he won't be able to run. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of scoring in this game. In fact, write this down. If you see any more than 6-3, 10-6 maximum at the first half, write me. Yell at me, scream at me, use curse words and all that stuff. Arizona, they've had 10 sacks in the last 2 games. And Seattle, they are ranked number, 32 at getting to the quarterback. So I don't think there's going to be much offense or anything like that. I got 2 plays for you, actually. The under 42, that's probably my strongest of the two, and Arizona plus 6.5. They're 9-1. Their defense, if nothing alone, defense will get it against teams that have trouble scoring. Take the plus 6.5. Take the under 42. And here's a question I got for John. When was the last time we saw a total in the 30s? Have we seen a total in the 30s this year? I remember 20, 30 years ago where almost every total was 37, 38, 39. And there would be some this time of year because of the weather, like up in Buffalo where they just got 2 feet of snow yesterday. It might get down to 32, 33.5. I don't remember this year seeing a total in the 30s, but this one's under 42, so let's smack it.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore with the rules changes and all the offense. Although with the weather being bad last week, we saw 10-4 under the total with the NFL. So that's something to keep in mind.
Exactly, that's my whole point. You know, a lot of the football thing. Yes, there's some different rules and all that stuff. But when you start looking at these totals that are between 42 and 49 and then in the 50s, yeah, if they got a strong quarterback, yes. But if it's a little bit less than that, like these two teams right now, these two quarterbacks aren't anything to write home about. So with a great defense, I think you can see this thing really fly under.
Yeah, this Seattle team has just a phenomenal spread record, like Arizona, but theirs goes back over 3 years, 39-21-1 against the spread. However, it hasn't happened for this season. They're 6-4 straight up, 4-6 against the spread. And when you look at the team, Harvard mentioned how great the defense is. The offense is kind of one-dimensional here. They're 30th in the NFL in passing, number 1 in rushing. That's what they do, and that was kind of evident Sunday, a 24-21 loss at Kansas City. They had a nice edge in yards, and they also had 204 yards rushing. They won the turnover battle 2-0. Normally, that's plenty for Seattle to win, but they couldn't quite get there. So, Zach, what to make of the defending champs here?
Just keep buying against them because we're getting value each and every week. It's one of the teams I've stayed away from, Seattle Seahawks. Either way, I think there's one or two games this year that I played for or against them. The Arizona Cardinals have been one of the teams I've talked about probably 3 weeks in a row on this show, and I'm glad it's one of those shows we're talking about this week, matchups we're talking about this week, because I'm going to say it's going to be like a recorder, the Arizona Cardinals plus the points. Odds makers are not going to adjust. How can you have a 9-1 team? It'd be a difference if they were 3-1, 4-2, something or another. This team's covered 8 of 9 games against the spread, and you're going to get 7 points now. I'm seeing it jump to 7 on online right now, but 7 points from a team that has the best offensive mind in football, Bruce Arians, best defensive coordinator in football, Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles just got a 3-year extension on his contract. He has the best secondary. You think Seattle has the best secondary? They were maybe a year or two ago, but you're seeing the guy from New England now, Shadow, did a real good job. Browner did a real good job on Sunday Night Football, and they really haven't had any key plays. When's the last time you've seen Richard Sherman make a key play this year? It hasn't happened. But with the Cardinals, going back to their secondary, they have Antonio Cromartie and Patrick Peterson. And I hate to say it, but I think they have a better secondary. Plus, they've got Tyrann Mathieu at safety. I forget the other safety off the top of my head, but they've got a better secondary than the Seattle Seahawks. Their defensive line's playing great, and Todd Bowles is making great second half adjustments. This team has not allowed more than 17 points in the fourth quarter over the last 8 games, besides that loss to the Denver Broncos. So 17 points, and their defense alone in the fourth quarter has scored 21 points. So what does that tell you? They're doing more than their offense is doing at times. So Arizona +7 is the bargain of the week. I don't care if people are waiting for that free fall to happen. It's not going to happen yet. Drew Stanton, he did make 2 awful picks against the Lions that people are going to have in the back of their mind, thinking this with Seattle's defense being this great, yada, yada, yada. But Bruce Arians will adjust, and Drew Stanton's been in the league long enough to not let those 2 throws affect him. And the Cardinals, it is just phenomenal what they're doing. Michael Floyd finally had 2 touchdowns last week. Larry Fitzgerald, he's going to play with that MRI, came back not any issues with his knee, so he'll be out on the field, and I just like them to keep covering. Might be another money line special.
All right, I'm going to
take John, let me interrupt just 1 second. You know, last week I had mentioned on this show and also wrote a column for one of the big publications that goes around, about Todd Bowles. I was mentioning that this has to be Arizona's year because they get to play in Phoenix if they make the Super Bowl. But the second thing was this might be the last time you see him because somebody is going to grab that guy. And isn't it ironic, within 3 or 4 days after I mentioned that, they signed him to a long-term deal. And one thing that Zach was also saying about how these guys are always in the game, I went back, and if you look at the first 10 games or every game, going into the fourth quarter, they're the only team by far that has been within 7 points in every single game playing into the fourth quarter. So that's another thing that's going to sit there and say, hey, they can get to the fourth quarter covering, and then that's when they end up taking over.
I think one last thing to add to that too that I should have mentioned just a few seconds ago, but then you've got team imbalance with the Seattle Seahawks. They had the Percy Harvin issue earlier this year. Marshawn Lynch didn't even come into the locker room at halftime with his teammates, and he's still 30% of their offense. So Todd Bowles is licking his chops right now.
Yeah, the defense keeps you in games, especially on the road, and Arizona certainly has this. I'm going to take a look at the total. We got some rainy weather forecast in Seattle. Not good weather for the game. Arizona defense, third against the run, which is what Seattle does, as Harvard mentioned. Seattle defensive numbers are very good. They're 6-2 under the total at home. And they face a team with a winning record. They're 7-3 under the total. These teams last met late last season on this field. It was a 17-10 game, and that's part of a 5-1 run under the total on this field between these two teams.
That was an outright runner, right?
That's right. As the dog going on, Baltimore is playing at New Orleans. New Orleans opened 3 and up to 4. Total went from 49.5 up to 50. If the Ravens, they come in off the bye week, but not playing very good. 1-2 the last 3 games. They had losses to the Bengals, 27-24, and the Steelers, 43-23. It's still a log jam there in that NFC North. Meanwhile, you got a third straight home game for the Saints, which is good news, but they lost the first 2 to the 49ers, 27-24, and the Bengals, 27-10. Sean Payton is now calling this a 6-game season. So Harvard, is it too late for that?
Well, no, not in that division. Can you imagine? Do you know who's leading the NFC South? Any idea?
The team we're talking about?
No, Atlanta.
Oh,
now, I haven't talked about them. I haven't played on them or against them. I think week 1 when they won right at the last, or was it overtime? But they beat New Orleans the first game, and they own the tiebreaker on them. And they're both 4-6. I mean, the league's going to have to do something. If you take a team from the NFC South and give them home field advantage over a team, I mean, these guys could be 7-9 or something like that and still get in the playoffs. That's absolutely ridiculous. The system needs to be overhauled. Baltimore is a team, and I'll be honest, I usually have a pretty good insight. A lot of it's psychological, emotional, situational, some fundamentals. I can never, ever tell anything about Baltimore. I have no idea when they're going to play, how they match up, or anything like that. They're 1-2 the last 3 games, then they get a bye, and now here I am asked to predict on something like this. How bad is New Orleans? Back-to-back losses with home games. It used to be the rule of thumb. Bet against them on the road, bet on them at home. Well, that didn't work either. And like I said, New Orleans, they did get a huge spike in life. I mean, they're sitting at 4-6, and they're on top of the heap. But let's do this. Let's look at this. Let's assume, for this instance, that New Orleans is going to win the game outright. Forget the spread for a second. They've lost back-to-back. Here's a team that rarely ever loses at home. I think 20 straight in a row, coached by Sean Payton, going into this last little fiasco. So assuming that they're going to win, there's only 2 numbers basically that are going to crush you. That's a number point spread, if they finish at 3 and at 4. Well, based on history of winning games 5 or more, they are 35-18 against the spread, which means they not only covered or won the game, but they covered the spread. And a lot of those spreads were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-point games. So based that this is a smaller spread, and I only have to dodge 2 numbers, I am going to go back in history. I'm not a big trend guy or anything like that, but you have a history of 53 games where they usually forget about winning. They're usually covering the spread through those 53 games. Well, this is just to win by. So basically, I'm just looking at them to win by 5 points. And I'm going on to the next game. So let's put a check mark next to New Orleans, lay the 4.5, and they're not going to lose 3 in a row. So all they have to do is just win by a little bit.
Yeah, the Saints team has some phenomenal spread numbers at home, 37-19 against the spread, but they've been a baffling team. 4-6 straight up, 4-6 against the number for this season, 7-3 run over the total. The offense is terrific, although they do lose Brandon Cooks for 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thumb, one of their weapons. But it's the defense that really stands out. 19th against the run, 24th against the pass. They just laid an egg at home against the Bengals the last game. So, I mean, Zach, is home field going to be a big difference for them, or is this defense just regressing too much?
Oh, man. New Orleans is one of the tougher teams to talk about, I think, on here. I've been a hot potato with that division. Talked about New Orleans, talked about Carolina, and now this house is mentioning Atlanta's creeping back up in there. But overall, the division is awful. And
it's possible.
Just a tad.
It's just awful. So whoever gets in there, who knows something.
It's like winning a poker hand with 6-4 offsuit or something.
Yep.
You know, it's incredible.
It's going to take Rob Ryan to hire his brother when Rex gets fired here in 2 weeks for that defense to take a turnaround. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But man, I think here I'm going to have to go with the total. Baltimore, they've still got some. It seems like their offense just is up and down at times, but I think this will be one of the weeks Joe Flacco can have a field day for them, throwing that football around. They have an underrated tailback in Forsett that's been pretty balanced week to week. It's been much better balanced than their offensive passing attack. And then the Saints, of course, Sean Payton. I'm sure there's some sideline animosity going on right now with his defensive coordinator, obviously, so he might just go back to one of those old run and shoot games like we saw against the Green Bay Packers Sunday Night Football. So I would take the over 50 points at home Monday Night Football. And I hate to go off that trend. I've stayed away from that total on Monday Night Football, but let's take the over of 50.
Yeah, this Andy Dalton of the Bengals had just one of the worst games of all time. Then he goes out and has a great game, and that's because he's facing this bad Saints defense. I will look at the total, too. You get 2 fine quarterbacks. They're playing indoors here. Ravens do have offensive balance, which they haven't had the last couple of years, but they're very good at rushing the football, 10th in rushing, 16th in passing. And then the Saints, I mean, they've got tremendous offensive weapons, but all kinds of defensive problems. The Saints are 5-1 over the total on field turf, so that's the way I will look at this game, a high-scoring shootout. All right, let's get to some best bets and what we have going on for the weekend. Harvard, we'll start with you.
Well, my best bet is going down to Texas to play the Houston Texans. Here, I thought J.J. Watt was just, really designed to crush offenses, with all his defensive efforts. Well, now they got him catching passes on the offense. He scored a touchdown last week. I thought that was great. Nice catch, J.J. Cincinnati, if you look at them, and I don't go by, memorizing stats and records and things like that, but it seems to me that in October they started off lose, and then they tied, and then they finally won a game. So they won a game in October, and then they won one, and they beat New Orleans. But it seems like they've had 2 wins since September. There's something wrong with this team. I don't know what it is or anything like that, but anytime there's a big game, Houston played Cleveland last week, and, the operative word was cruised, just smooth sailing. They cruised past Cleveland on the road. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this team, offensive, defensive. Foster didn't even play. I think that they're going to smoke at home, laying the 2.5 against Cincinnati. I really think this Houston Texan team they're solid. I like the coaching staff. I like what they do on defense, and I'm a big defensive guy. And I'm not a big favorite better, but I'm going to lay the 2.5 on this game.